Welcome to our special review tonight on Utah law topics. These are really important because, as you know, half of passing the exam is passing the Utah test. There's going to be a national test and a Utah test. If you fail one and pass one, you have to go back and take the exam again, although you only have to take the portion that you were unsuccessful with, which we don't want to be Utah law, and we don't want it to be national either. We want you to pass the first time. There's no discount. It's not like it's half price because you're only taking one of the two tests. They're going to charge you the full amount. You're going to have to go through the pat down, and you're going to lock up your phone, and of course your Colt firearm and whatever else you're carrying, and let you in there. But just pass the first time, okay? Just work on this and you can do this. I mean, come on, you only really need an 80% on a multiple choice test. You guys can do this, but it does take time and it does take effort. And for those of you that have extended your real estate study period over like a year or so, it's going to be more difficult because you only load this stuff up in short-term memory, and then you forgot everything you learned about agency and water rights and whatever else long ago. And then you finally get everything done, and then you got to study everything all over again. So just compress it into as quick a program as you can. Work practice exams day and night, and learn definitions, and you're going to be fine. So tonight we're going to be talking, like I said, about some Utah law topics, and the first one is about, well, the first several is about some of the real estate recovery fund questions that you may very well see. So number one, here we go. Oh, with us tonight, of course, is Mr. Dan Naylor, who is acting as, of course, our technical expert tonight, but he's also the owner of the school, so he can kind of watch me and make sure I don't screw up. I appreciate it, Dan. Appreciate being here. Okay, the minimum balance of the real estate recovery fund at the beginning of any year for satisfying judgments rendered against licensees that's the minimum balance of the entire fund. Now, when you renew your license every 2 years, you're going to pay a fee, and part of that fee goes to replenish the recovery fund. And of course, there's people renewing their license throughout the entire year. It's not that there's just 1 month that everyone renews on. It depends on when you got your license originally. And for those of us that are old timers like me, been around for 45 years, back in the day when they were licensing people that started back when I started, they base it on your birth month, but they don't do that anymore. If for those of you that are passing the exam in April and you license in April, your license will always expire in April, okay, and every couple of years. So part of the money you pay in those fees goes in to replenish the recovery fund. So this question has to do with, okay, how much is the minimum amount that has to be in there as we go into a fiscal year for the state? And the answer to that is it 100, 200, 150, or 50,000? 50,000 seems a little light. 200 may seem a little high. We don't get, we get complaints, but we don't get that many complaints in the state of Utah. I mean, we got a lot of good operators in our state and a lot of people that don't screw up, but there are a few that do, and there are a few that probably shouldn't have got into business. So 50 is probably too light. So if you intuitively went for A, man, you're getting tuned in. I'm excited for you because that is the correct answer, $100,000. So it's $100,000 is a minimum balance. Do they normally carry a little bit more than that? Yeah, they do, because they can use this money for other things other than just paying money out to the public for airing licensees and the problems that they caused. They can also use it for education and research into real estate. Okay, let's go to number 2, please. Which of the following is not a purpose for the recovery fund, the real estate recovery fund? Education, I kind of mentioned that just a moment ago. Reimbursement for public for damages, I kind of mentioned that just a moment ago. Provide research, I kind of mentioned that just a moment ago. So what the most obvious one here that's not right, because those three are things that can be used for the recovery fund, but note the question. Which of the following is not? And see how not is all in caps? That's the way you're going to see it on the test. They're not going to try to hide a not in there where it takes a question and you're heading down this road and then there's a big shift and you can go the other direction without giving you fair notice. So is not a purpose for recovery fund. Obviously, it's not there to pay the travel expenses of the commissioners. Commissioners do attend different things that the state picks up the tab for. One of them is called the caravan, which is really a lot of fun. And what the commissioners do is they travel around the state to some of the remote areas like, Moab or Monticello or Vernal and a few of those areas that don't get as much attention out of Salt Lake as they would like to have. And so every year they have what they call the caravan, and they go around and they visit these places. If you go to the caravan meetings, you actually get CE credit for that as well. So it's probably a good thing to do. So the correct answer in number 2, that is not a purpose of the recovery fund, is to pay the travel expenses of the commissioners. Nope, they don't do that. Being on the commission is a real honor. You're suggested or kind of put in there for consideration by the governor, and then you're approved by the Senate. So it's kind of a it's a real honor to serve on the commission, and normally they serve for a number of years. And there's a lot of different rules on that, and you need to know them. That like there can only be one commissioner from each county, and there's 5 commissioners, and all of them have to be involved with real estate as a licensee in one way or another, except for one, and that's called the commissioner at large. So we have 4 commissioners that are licensees and one that's not a real estate licensee. A lot of times they're with they own a title company or they run a title company. Sometimes they're lenders, but there's someone who's usually aligned with real estate, but they don't have a real estate license. Let's go to number 3, please. The maximum amount that would be paid from the recovery fund for a single claim. What is the maximum amount? $2,000, $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000? Well, the maximum amount is D, $15,000. $2,000, that won't even buy a nice cruise these days. Okay, $5,000, pretty nice cruise. $10,000, $15,000. You can rack up $15,000 in damages that a licensee occurred or caused to happen to a consumer quite easily. So that's our answer, guys. Number 3 is D, $15,000. These are things you have to know, and it should come to you really fast, because when you're doing a Utah law test, you usually do the national first, and then you do Utah law second, and you're getting tired by that time, and hopefully you've got plenty of time if you've budgeted your time wisely. But these, you either know them or you don't. You can't figure a lot of this stuff out when you're sitting there in front of the computer. So the faster you can get those answers, the more time you have to work through this. Because in the Utah law test, there's going to be some questions where you have to refer back to previous screens in order to look at a real estate purchase contract or look at like a settlement sheet. Let's go to number 4, please. And I don't want you freaking out because you don't have enough time left. And by the way, there's no penalty for guessing. If you don't choose an answer, you're going to get it wrong. So, you might put your finger on the screen up there and rub it back and forth real fast. And pretty soon one of those 4, A, B, C, or D, is going to be hot because of friction. And that's the right answer, 25% of the time. So what is the maximum that the real estate recovery fund will pay out to all claimants against a single agent? Now, we saw in a single case, they're only going to pay out $15K. So that's what A is, but that's a single case. But this agent could have messed over a dozen different consumers or 5 different consumers. And so it would behoove a consumer who's coming after an agent and thinking about tapping the recovery fund for some of that 15 grand for each individual person to get in right away. because they're eventually gonna tap this out, and it's gonna tap out at C $50,000. Well, $50,000 is not that many people. Yeah, so out of, I mean, if they're paying out 15 grand a piece, and they messed over 10 people, and the people that don't get things filed and get a final judgment and then prove that the agent can't pay it, or won't pay it, or they've disappeared or whatever, or they're dead, then probably what they're going to have to do is punt, because unless that agent had some assets they're going after, it's just a lot easier to tap the fund, at least for the first 15 grand, because it might even be higher than 15 that they were awarded by court. So you got to go all the way through court, get a judgment against the agent, and then show the commissioners that in one way or another that the agent doesn't have any money or can't pay it. Maybe they file bankruptcy, I don't know, but which doesn't, but which is a reflection on the fact they don't have any money. But you need to get after it right away. And of course, your lawyers, he or she'll know this, because there are a few lawyers in our state that work this type of business, or they're qualified to do this kind of business because they're very familiar with the rules and whatnot. Let's go look at number 5, please. We're talking about the state engineer's office now, and they handle applications for what? Do you think the state engineer is going to handle your application for the real estate license? If you're shaking your head like this, hey, good on you. No, they don't do that. Okay, they don't have, the state engineer's office do not handle that. They don't handle easements, and they don't handle lien like a mortgage or a tax lien. They don't do any of those three. What they do is water appropriation, water rights. They're covered by the Utah State Engineer's Office. So the correct answer to number 5 is D, as in David, the water appropriation. That's what they do. And real strong possibility you're going to need to know this on when you take your state exam. Number 6 is about prior appropriation. Is a water law used in dry states like Utah to give the first priority to the buyer, the seller, the lender, or how about the government? Well, if you pick the government, you're smart. Okay. All water rights are appropriated out to individuals by people in the state engineer's office. It's called the water rights division, as part of the state engineer's office. But they're given this because of our constitution in the state, and the fact that we do prior appropriation here. And there's a hierarchy in what the water can be used for. The highest use of water in Utah, if there's applications coming in for the same amount of water out of an area, out of an aquifer, they're going to give the first priority to agriculture, because that's just our state was an agricultural state to begin with. And then there's some other uses, maybe for commercial purposes and whatnot. But the very last one is culinary water. That is the last usage. Now, I'm not, don't get me wrong, when a city puts in their water system, that's a little different type of program. But if you're drilling a well, but on the other hand, culinary water throughout a well doesn't use that much water either. So there's usually enough to go around. But the correct answer to this one, prior appropriation, dry states, it's the government. And pretty much a lot of the Western states, at least, before you get to California, water is a very, very important issue. By the way, as a real estate broker or agent, you can actually sell water rights. It is a real property interest. You can list it. There's very few people in our state that understand them. They have that higher level of knowledge you need to have to deal in this. But there's a handful, and they do well. They do very well. So if you have an interest in this area, you might come in and try to tutor on one of these old salts that are, really tuned into that, and it's, it could be very lucrative for you. You're not going to have a lot of competition. Number 7. Okay, in order to qualify for a water right, the applicant must demonstrate that the water will be potable, meaning drinkable, Not necessarily. Use for beneficial use, hang on to that one. That's warm and fuzzy. Available year round, that would be nice, but not necessary. And stored under sanitary conditions. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Guys, it's B, use for beneficial use. That's how they're going to, determine that hierarchy. And of course, as I told you, the highest use for beneficial use is, it's categorized, and that is agriculture. Okay, let's go to the next one, please. Number 8. Okay, number 8 says, which of the following recorded water rights are not found in Utah? Okay, appropriated water in the form of stock ownership, water company rights in the form of shares. Now, what we're talking about here in B is like an irrigation company, and you don't own the water right, but the irrigation company does, and they divvy out shares, like shares of stock, and the more shares of stock you have, the more you could take out of that canal. Which is interesting, but it's not the right answer. Appropriated rights attached to a deed, or water riparian rights attached to a deed. Okay. What we're looking at here, which of the following is not? Okay, you see that not again up there? See, if you were looking for this for things that are instead of things that are not, you're going to get really confused real fast. So I suggest that you read the question 2 times before you even glance at the answers. And if that not doesn't hit you smack you in the face, because it's capped and it's right out there in front of you, but it changes the direction of the question. So these others are somewhat, attached to water rights one way or another, except for number or letter B. Okay, the 4th one, letter B, water riparian rights attached to a deed. Okay. So appropriated rights could be in the form of a deed. That's how we would transfer water rights, is with the deed. And B is, of course, those shares of stock I talked about, and the other one up above is also another way. It's really kind of a restatement of B. Okay, let's go to number 9, please. Okay, we're going to switch direction just a tiny bit here and talk a little bit about mechanics liens. Okay, so all the following can file a mechanics lien except material men, that's people supplying lumber or whatever types of products go into the house, concrete, wiring, plumbing, real estate agents, architects, and subcontractors. Now, if you're looking at this list real carefully, there's only one that kind of glares out at you. And all the following can file a mechanics lien, and oh, look at that, except again. In other words, this is another one of those negative questions. Now, material men, the people that supply everything that went into building that house, the roofing materials and whatever else. Real estate agents, we don't do that. Architects, they're heavily involved, particularly in larger commercial buildings or even medium or small commercial buildings, and they're very involved in real estate from development, and also a lot of single family homes are designed by architects. Or even if it's a remodel, maybe designed by an architect. So they're definitely can be covered, and subcontractors, like the sheetrock guys and, the plumbers and the electricians and whatnot. So out of all those, it should be glaring you right in the face, and the correct answer is B. That's the except. We cannot file a mechanics lien because what we're doing is we have a contract with the property owners, but it's a personal services contract. It had nothing to do with materials being supplied to build the house or remodel the house or anything like that, or designing the house or working on the house. Okay, our services, although we're dealing in real estate, but they're not dealing in improving, building, remodeling, designing. That's not what we do. Therefore, we're not covered on the mechanics lien. If you have a situation that's a problem, you can't file a lien. And if you do, you're going to have a very unpleasant day in front of the commissioners, because they get real angry with agents that try to enforce rights that they don't have. You should have known that. You should have known that that was wrong. Okay, and so they're, always get at least one or two people's advice. If your broker says, yeah, that's okay, go ahead and do that, but it still doesn't feel right to you, check it out with someone else. Call a real estate lawyer, call your real estate instructors like Dan or I, at least run it by someone else, a senior agent in one of your in your office, and see, oh no, you can't do that. And then if there's a conflict there, we even have a legal hotline at the Utah Association of Realtors that you can call in on 2 or 3 days, sometimes 4 days a week, and you can talk to a lawyer who's heard it all. It's their job to answer all these questions, so they know it all. It's a really great service. Number 10, for members of the Utah Association of Realtors. Number 10. Okay, mechanics liens must be filed within how many days after the notice of completion on a project listed on the state construction registry? Well, guys, do you think it would be just a few days, like 10 or 20? Probably not. That's not fair. Do you think it would be a lot of time, like, a quarter or, half a year or a whole year? Probably not. So the one that feels just right, would be D, 90 days, because that's the right answer. Okay. So not too little, not too many, 90 days, 3 months. But that's after the notice of completion. Because we wanted some sort of deadline here where, the guy can't come back 2 years later and say, hey, I was never paid for the work I did on the sheetrock. Can't do that. Once that notice of completion is filed with the state, it's on the state construction registry, then you better get your tush in there within 90 days and file those mechanics liens. Otherwise, they could, if you came in there at 95 days or 91 days or even 160 days, you could be sued for slander of title, and that's not a very pleasant thing. And it would probably also, if you had a license, like a general contractor's license and whatnot, there could be very serious ramifications because you should have known you can't do that. Get a good attorney. Don't use the guy or the lady that, handled your divorce. And that's all they do is divorce law. Get someone that actually understands real estate law. Get a real estate attorney, who does a significant amount of business in real estate. And otherwise, you're barking up the wrong tree. Let's look at 11, please. By the way, if you guys have any questions, just feel free to chime in. I'm happy to go in a different direction or to dig more into something in order to clarify. Number 11, how many days following the notice of lien does a contractor have to take the matter to court? You filed your lien. Now you got to do something. Hopefully they'll say, oh, that guy filed a lien against us. We better get that settled out. And probably if they have a construction loan or they're trying to get permanent financing, the lender's going to make sure that they get that sorted out. But it's 180 days, it's like half a year. Okay. So the correct answer is 180 days. Obviously 30 is too few. A whole year, C, is too many, and 3 months, well, that was that other question. Okay. That, you got to get your lien filed. But once it's filed, you got a half a year or so to get to, 180 days or so, almost half a year, to get in there and get it figured out. File a lawsuit anyway. Then they know you're really serious. Number 12, please. The owner of a project should obtain which of the following in conjunction with any payment to a qualified mechanic on a construction project? Okay. So here's the guy that just brought over a load of materials. There was some lumber on there, maybe some cabinets, insulation, all kinds of different things that could be delivered. And he's been handed a check, And so what do you want? Don't you think you ought to have some way of, demonstrating to a judge that bill was paid? Well, maybe you figure, maybe the cancel check is enough. Not really. If you're doing this a lot or even a little, you should know that you should have received a lien waiver release form. There's a form for this. It's readily available. And of course, your real estate attorney, they already have them in your database and their database. A notice of commencement. Okay, you're graduating into a problem here. I don't know. A certificate of completion. That's nice. If but it doesn't quite fulfill the function of the lien waiver release. That's what you want. And notice of claim lien. That's another thing that you get when maybe they filed a lien. Now, most contractors don't in advance. Some do. Some vendors do for supplying materials to a home. They automatically file a lien. But most people view that as a very negative aspect, like, you're not trusted and whatnot. It could have an effect on your credit, could affect your ability to get the final loan. So, most contractors and material suppliers and subcontractors won't do that. They might threaten to do it, but they don't really want to do it. Because a lot of them are paid out of a construction loan, or they're paid out of the final draw out of a construction loan. And if they put any doubts in the lender's mind that there could be something wrong with this whole deal, they may freeze the money. They may not pay, until they're more comfortable that everything was done the way it should. And a lot of builders, are very tuned into this. But I guarantee you the bankers are tuned into it even more, okay? And smart lenders who do a lot of construction loans and whatnot, they usually employ some, older, maybe retired builders who actually follow the lien releases, and they also follow the draws out of the construction loan. So if the contractor drew out all the money for the bathrooms, and then the bank sends someone out there to look at the house and the bathrooms are not completed, they're going to want to get a hold of that contractor and say, well, wait a minute, it's been a month since you pulled that money out for the bathrooms. I mean, why weren't the tubs and everything finished and installed? Because we're not giving you money so you can run the window over and see if you can double it. Okay. Number 13. An agent can transmit contracts by email or other digital delivery services as long as what? All the agent thinks it's the other agent in the deal thinks it's a great idea. All the clients agree. Their broker approves. The division of real estate receives a copy. Yeah, the last thing the division wants is a copy of all your contracts. Now, if they come asking for it, well, then they do want a copy of your contracts. They're auditing you. But you can imagine being inundated with copies of every deal or offer or whatever that occurred in the state of Utah. It'd be a horrible job, keep track of all that stuff. They don't want that. They don't want it unless they want it. And then when they come out wanting it, you better get it to them. So that's not the one. And their broker, maybe, but is there a better answer? And yes. The better answer is, who are the people that are really involved? Yeah, we're involved as agents and whatnot in marketing and making sure the paperwork's done and everything. But it's the clients, it's the buyers and the sellers, that this is their transaction. So obviously B is the correct answer here. The clients have to agree. And of course they agree in writing, and in the written form that they agree in is already in the Rep C contract. It says that, facsimiles or, email type things, are also considered the same as an original. So, and boy, it sure makes our life a lot easier. Okay. And more efficient. Number 14, please. Okay. On this one, we're talking about which of the following requires that any agency agreement be in writing. Now, an agency agreement might be a buyer's listing, or it might be a seller's listing. It's an employment contract where they're saying, I want you to sell my home, or I want you to help me find one. Okay. So what requires this to be in writing? The statute of frauds. Hey, if that's your instinct, right on, brother, sister, you're doing good. Okay. Utah statute of frauds. Statute of frauds is one of those uniform contracts where they're pretty much the same in all states. There could be some minor differences, but it's like it's a uniform contract, and it's smart to have contracts that fall into that category, because because the statute of frauds in California is very similar to Utah, is also very similar to New Mexico, which is also very similar to Texas. And, it's good to have those because people do operate over state lines all the time. So that's the correct answer. Now, the doctrine of prior appropriation, that had something to do with water rights. That had nothing to do with agency agreements. Okay. The Dodd-Frank Act has a lot to do with loans and that type of things and regulating banks and that sort of thing. But, it's not really an agency contract. When you see the words agency agreement or agency contract, start immediately thinking, okay, I got a listing. I'm putting the house on the market, or I got a buyer. They've contracted with me to help them find a home. That's an agency agreement where you're going to act as an agent for a buyer or a seller or both. Okay, and the Association of Realtors, well, that's our private club, that we all join so we can have access to the MLS. And there's a state association, there's a national association, and there are local boards of realtors. They're all over the state. So you'll be joining those three organizations in order to get your MLS key, which allows you to get in and out of houses that are listed and whatnot. And also there's a lot of educational classes that are available to you, although, we'd love you to come back to the school because we keep things really current. And a lot of us actually do teach for the associations as well. They call the schools and ask us to come out and do that. Look at 15, please. And here we go. Leases must be in writing unless they are for less than 6 months, a year, 18 months, or 2 years. 2 years seems a bit long. 18 months is still a little bit long. 6 months is probably too short. So the correct answer to this one, guys, is 1 year. Leases must be in writing unless they are for less than, so 11 and a half months is less than a year. Okay. Now, you're a fool and a stupid landlord if you don't have a written agreement. I mean, with tenant law being what it is, and the sympathy of the courts always going to the smaller guys, you don't want that working against you. Your best defense as a landlord is a well written and signed rental agreement, which clearly defines what the rights of the tenant are and what your rights are as a landlord. And you'd be a fool not to have a really good one, even if it was for a 6-month rental. Okay. Now, do you have to have a written agreement if it's less than a year? No. But you're a dang fool if you don't, because there's too many issues that need to be ironed out and very clearly specified. And your right to re-enter, your right to go and turn off the water if there's if they're out of town and the neighbors are calling because there's water running down the street and out from the house. All those types of things that could happen. You have those rights defined. And a well-written agreement is really important. Where do you get these well-written agreements? You can get some on the internet. You can get some from different associations that have them and have been worked on for years. You can, you can get other landlords to lend you theirs, and you can craft your own. But don't leave home without one, because it's what's going to really protect you. Okay. Being a landlord is a great thing. It's not totally passive income, unless you hire a property management company to handle all those things for you. But if you want a situation where you can make, 10, 8, 10, 15, 20%, sometimes 25% return on your investment, considering in the appreciation of prices as well. Real estate's one of the few places where you can still get that, and so things might change. There's all kinds of things happening in our world today, and everyone keeps talking about, changing the tax laws and making them more simple. But right now, one of the big reasons why real estate is so popular is because of all of the tax benefits that come with that. And the primary one is depreciation on properties that, are rented out or used in a trade or business, or, service type properties, that type of thing. You can depreciate that over a period of time and take that off against other types of income. A lot of docs that make, $300,000-$400,000 a year because of their specialties and things that they do, they can shelter a large portion of that doctor income by owning a lot of real estate. Okay. And I know and have had in the past several doctor clients that I loved working with because they're always looking for ways to save money on taxes. Now that might change. We might be going to a value added tax. Who knows? What the future is going to bring. But I'll tell you this. It's always a buyer's market or it's always a seller's market. But sometimes it's a mixed market. Sometimes it's hard to define if it's a buyer's or seller's market. But it's always a realtor's market. Okay, we just take our 6, 7, whatever percent that you and your broker decide to charge right off the top, and it's a fantastic way to bless lives and make money. And a thought for today. By the way, if you have questions about tonight's class or any other class, or just you want to talk to someone that's taken the exam in Utah a whole lot. And not because I flunked, it's because they used to open it up for all the instructors to take it as much as we wanted. And I'd take it 12, 14 times a year. You can't memorize the questions, guys. There's just too many of them. There's like 3,000 questions in the database on national, and the state is not that extensive, but they always do test on certain topics. So anyway, call if you could think I can help. 801-556-8000. It's my secret cell phone number. And I answer my own phone. I mean, people call me and say they're shocked when I answer the phone. Yeah, well, who else would I have answer my phone? I'm answering the phone. Yeah, if I don't answer the phones because I'm not available, leave a message. I'll get back to you. And don't call me during the exam. I could be the most help to you then, but that's inappropriate. Okay, here's a thought to live by in real estate. Okay, thinking cost nothing, yet creates everything. Thinking costs nothing, yet creates everything. In real estate, a lot of people that get into business and get right out of the business do so because they're like walking on a sponge or they're walking on jello. They can't ever seem to get a firm footing. You need to keep track of where your business is coming from, and you need to do some thinking. Don't cost you anything, but track all your transactions so you know that this type of advertising is working and this type of advertising is not working. Well, then quit spending money on what doesn't work and spend the money on what does work. And do some thinking about how you're doing your business. Does most of your business come from sellers, or does most of your business come from buyers, or is it a mix? Long-term agents have found for many years that working with sellers is better than working with a lot of buyers. Particularly in the market we just came out of, where you were writing 4 and 8 or 9 or 10 or 12 offers for a buyer in order to get a house under contract that they could finally close on. And I've had agents call me that are just really upset because, oh man, this is just so hard, run around with all these buyers. Well, but in every one of those transactions, there was someone else on the other side. And that was the listing agent. So if you got if you got 12 listings out there at a time, whatever, you're going to be a top income earner in this industry. I mean, if you got 50, it'd be better, but if you've only got 4 or 5 and are constantly turning over, you're still going to be loving life because, the 10 other agents that wrote offers on all your listings, they're out writing 10 or 12 offers. And, someone always won in every one of those, and that was the listing agent. So the other 9 agents of the 10 that wrote offers on your listing, they don't, they're all still looking for a house for that buyer, but you got it under contract with another agent, which was great, because, you get your part of it. Well, it's a great business, and we're glad you're here with us today. Please call the school if we can be of any help. I would advise you to take advantage of Dan Naylor's fabulous books that he's actually put together, the textbooks. If you have not purchased the textbooks, what's wrong with you? Retaking the test is going to cost you 40 or 50 bucks. You don't want to do that. So buy the textbook. You'll find it really informative and very helpful in preparing for the exam. You wouldn't go to college and skimp and not buy the textbook, or maybe you would, but then you're really one of those smart people. Okay. Well, we appreciate you being here. Dan, thanks a lot. for everything that you do for all of us who are out there making it happen in real estate, and you do real estate too. So thanks for being with us tonight, folks, and call if we can be of any service. Oh, and as we say in Utah County, appreciate you.